It all started when I met my fiancée through some mutual friends. We had a buddy named Mike, who also happened to be my closest friend. It seemed perfect that Mike and my girlfriend got along well, and when I eventually proposed to her, I asked him to be my best man. My fiancée was thrilled with the choice and said it was a great idea. I did notice she was a little extra excited, but since they were friends too, I shrugged it off. Fast forward to a week before the wedding. My bride-to-be was full of energy, always glued to her phone. I figured it was just because of all the wedding planning. She'd often stop and ask me for my opinion on little details, and I went along with whatever made her happy. But looking back now, I realized she was probably doing that just to keep me from suspecting anything. What was really happening? She was chatting with another man, and not just any man. My best man. We had our bachelor and bachelorette parties on the same night, which seemed cool at the time. But I was pretty let down when Mike called to say he couldn't make it to my bachelor party, which he had planned. He told me his mom had been rushed to the hospital, and he needed to be with her. I mean, who would doubt a story like that, right? I felt bad later for being suspicious. Anyway, the night went on, and I had a great time with my other friends. We're an active bunch, so before hitting up this fancy lounge downtown, we played basketball, then cleaned up real nice. I was feeling on top of the world, and I figured my fiancée must have been just as excited. It's funny because we were already living together, but we'd agreed to wait until after the wedding to be intimate again. It was harder than I thought it'd be, so we took turns sleeping on the pull-out couch in the living room each night. When I got home that night, she was already asleep in our bed, looking peaceful like she'd had the time of her life. I tucked her in, but something shiny on the floor caught my eye. It was a gold cufflink, and it stood out because I knew she didn't have any cufflinks. The pair I owned did not match the one I found. That was my first clue that something might be wrong. My mind started racing. Could someone else have been in our bedroom? I started rubbing my face, feeling the stress build up. Right then, her phone buzzed. She had it on vibrate, but I could hear it on the nightstand. So, I decided to take a look. One conversation with Mike popped out at me right away. The last message was from 4 hours earlier, at 9 p.m. As I scrolled up, it hit me like a ton of bricks. She had invited him to her bachelorette party. That's not how things normally go, and I could tell something was off. It got worse as I read the earlier messages. She had told him that night would be their time together since she'd be with me after that. He even asked if he could be with her again sometime, and she joked that maybe he could if he tempted her enough. I kept scrolling and saw messages from months ago where things went from being friendly to flirty. He asked about her body, and she even sent him pictures. They made plans to meet up one day when I thought she was working. In another message, he asked if they should have done what they did, and she said she was sure about it. In just an hour, I went from being on cloud nine about marrying her to feeling absolutely shattered. But instead of crumbling, I wanted to get even. I took 6 screenshots of their worst messages and decided I was going to read them during my vows. It was going to be as brutal as the betrayal I felt. After saving the evidence, I deleted the text from her phone and took some NyQuil to knock myself out. The next morning, she was already gone, leaving me a handwritten note saying she left early to get her hair and makeup done. But I knew better. Imagine being all dressed up for the happiest day of your life, only to have it blown to pieces by someone calling you out as a cheater in front of everyone. That was exactly what I was about to do. I was bitter, and I did not want her apology. I was done with her. I could not believe how much I had loved her while she was sneaking around with someone else. I put a lot of effort into getting ready that morning, looking sharp and smelling great. Part of me felt like it was pointless, but I kept going. I thought about telling my dad what I had planned, but I knew he would try to talk me out of it. Then, just as I was about to leave for the venue, Mike texted me, asking if I was on my way. When I got there, he greeted me outside, looking sharp himself, but I only had one thing on my mind: those cufflinks. As a bit of a risk, I pretended to notice he was missing one, even though I could not be sure. He looked caught off guard and embarrassed. He said he must have lost the cufflink somewhere, that it must have snagged on something. I asked if I could take a closer look at the one he still had, just in case I came across its match. His heart was practically pounding out of his chest, and he was sweating like a pig. Watching him squirm like that was oddly satisfying, but I kept my face blank, playing it cool. So, he handed me the cufflink, and surprise, surprise, It was an exact match to the one I had tucked away in my pocket. I stared at him, dead serious, for what felt like an eternity. My whole body was fighting the urge to either yell at him or punch him square in the face. He could sense something was wrong and asked if I was feeling all right. Snapping out of it, I forced a fake smile and said, "Yeah, everything's just great. I mean, I'm getting married today, right?" Then I gave him a hard slap on the back, making him jump. After enduring the mindless mingling during the procession, I finally stepped into the venue. But I could not shake the thought that I never wanted to go through this whole traditional wedding nonsense again. It all seemed so shallow, so pointless. When my fiancée walked down the aisle, looking absolutely breathtaking, all the memories of our time together rushed back. It was like a cruel joke, and I could feel the tears coming. But these were not tears of joy. People around me could tell. I was broken inside. I held it together until the moment came for me to read my vows. That is when I began reading out loud the messages between Jake and my fiancée, complete with dates and times. At first, everyone was confused, probably thinking it was some kind of joke. But as they listened closer, they realized these were no love letters. They were steamy, flirty texts. People started shifting in their seats, clearly uncomfortable as they realized what was unfolding. My fiancée asked me what I was doing, demanding to know what I was reading from my phone. Right then, I got another message. She told me to stop, but I ignored her and kept going. I read the most inappropriate messages right there, in front of everyone. Him talking about how he wanted to be with her again, and her inviting him over after I had left the house. The room was buzzing with whispers, and she lunged at me, trying to grab my phone. Jake, the best man, quickly slipped out, followed by 5 of my groomsmen. I stood there, shouting that I had screenshots of their messages, and even offered to show them to anyone who was curious. That made a few guests get up and leave. The officiant had the nerve to ask if we were still going to go through with the wedding, and I could not help but burst out laughing, loud and sarcastic. There she was, my ex, on her knees at the altar in her white dress, sobbing uncontrollably. Her bridesmaids just stood there, frozen, like they had no idea what to do. Some of them might have known about her affair, or at least noticed her being flirty with Jake, but nobody rushed to comfort her. It felt good in a way, watching her face the mess she had made all by herself. By then, I had had enough. My head was pounding, and the whole scene was too much to handle. I walked outside, needing air, and there I found Jake cornered by the 5 guys, who were screaming at him for betraying me. Honestly, I was done. I had gotten the revenge I wanted, and now all I wanted was to lie down and sleep. I told the guys to let him go, that keeping him there was not going to fix anything. As they backed off, my ex came running out of the venue, with her bridesmaids chasing after her, shouting insults and calling her every terrible name in the book. She ran behind Jake's car for about 10 yards before he finally noticed her in his rearview mirror and stopped. She hopped in, and off they went together. I turned around to see a bunch of our guests standing there, watching the whole spectacle like it was some kind of reality show. They started coming up to me, offering hugs and words of comfort. It was awkward, but at least they were trying to be supportive. One thing was clear, though. Those people were not on her side anymore. She and Jake lost the respect and friendship they had with our whole circle, family, and friends included. They ended up leaving the state together, but their relationship fell apart pretty quickly. They only made it about a year living together before my ex moved back in with her parents, who were clearly disappointed and pretty harsh on her. What a total waste of time that whole mess was. After everything that happened, she had the nerve to ask me out again. I just told her she was out of her mind. As for my so-called best friend, he never reached out, but that is all right by me. There is no way we could be friends after what he did anyway. Thankfully, I had my friends and family standing by me the whole time, making sure I did not lose hope or sink too low. I have not started dating again yet, but there is this one girl I have been thinking about asking out. Now, on to the second story. My wife and I had been married for 10 years. Our anniversary party was coming up, and I could hardly believe how lucky I was to have someone by my side for that long. We knew each other inside and out and were the best of friends. We even believed that our zodiac signs made us soulmates, and maybe that was why our relationship felt so solid. I did notice her sign had a bit of a reputation for cheating, but I brushed that off and trusted her completely. Over the past decade, we had a daughter, 3 years into the marriage. My wife stayed in the same job all those years, and right before our summer family vacation, she was about to land her biggest raise yet. Everything felt perfect, like I had found my one true love, and I believed she would always be there for me. The night she came home after getting her raise, she was all flustered, like she was excited but also distracted. There was something in her face that told me there was more going on. I asked if she was just having a hard time believing her own success, and she forced a laugh, saying, "Yeah," but it felt like she was not being totally honest. I knew something was bothering her, but when I pressed, she brushed it off, claiming she was just overwhelmed by the good news. At that moment, cheating was not even on my radar. Then, as she was heading into the bedroom, she made this odd comment about how incredible her boss was and how lucky she was that he liked her so much. That threw me off. It sounded strange, and I could see in her eyes that she realized she had slipped up by saying it like that. The next day was our anniversary party. As we were getting ready, she got a call from her boss. She excused herself to take the call in her office, which was not unusual since she liked to take notes for work. But this time, I quietly snuck up near the door and listened in. At first, she was just thanking him again for the raise. Then her voice dropped, and she started whispering. She told him how glad she was to have thanked him properly, called him amazing, and even said she wanted to be with him again. She asked if there were security cameras in his office, making sure they would not get caught or fired for whatever they had been doing. In that moment, it all clicked in my head. I felt like barging into the room and confronting her on the spot, but I held back. Instead, I decided to make my move at the anniversary party. I needed to push myself to face the truth and go through with a divorce. It seemed pretty clear she had just admitted to sleeping with her boss in his office. I stood there, frozen outside the door, waiting for her to come out. When she saw me standing so close, she got flustered, trying to act like everything was normal. I forced a fake smile and nodded. She asked if I was ready to go, and we left together. I felt like a ghost, just going through the motions, while she was a bundle of nerves, lighting up a cigarette, which she only did when she was really stressed. On the drive, she kept asking if I was all right, clearly trying to figure out if I had heard anything. We pulled up to the venue, and I turned to her and said, "Let's go celebrate our 10-year marriage, wife." My voice completely flat, almost robotic. She knew I had overheard, but neither of us could bring ourselves to address it. Inside, she sat there, looking like she was sweating bullets while I went around, greeting our friends and family like nothing was wrong. I made a point to act calm, even though everything inside me was a mess. Our 7-year-old daughter was there too, thanks to my parents giving us some time alone before the party. Seeing everyone we loved, especially our daughter, made my wife even more on edge. She kept fidgeting, looking more uncomfortable by the minute. Her face turned beet red, and people started noticing. They gathered around, saying she did not look well, but she kept insisting she was fine. It was clear to everyone that she was sweating bullets. That is when I took my chance. I raised my voice and told the crowd that my wife was having an affair with her boss. The room went dead silent as everyone tried to process what I had just said, and then she fainted on the spot. Thankfully, our friends and family were not cruel. They rushed to help, fanning her and putting a cool cloth on her forehead, just like people used to do in the old days. When she came around, she looked so embarrassed and could barely get any words out. Finally, she managed to say she wanted to go home. I asked her which home she was talking about. That hit her hard, and she broke down sobbing before running off to the bathroom. I thanked everyone for coming and then took my daughter back home with me. We went straight to bed, and my wife tried calling a few times. A couple of other people called too, but I was already out like a light and did not hear any of it. I felt relieved knowing the truth was finally out and that I had the strength to kick her out of my life. Later on, I found out that one of her cousins took her in, giving her a place to stay. But that was just the beginning of what was going to change. I decided to send an email to her company's HR department, explaining what had happened. About a week later, they replied, thanking me for the information and letting me know that they had taken appropriate action. After that, my ex-wife called me up, furious. She started by calling me a low-down slime bag for ruining both her and her boss's careers, which they had been building their whole lives. I shot back and called her a slime bag too, for destroying our marriage after I had put in 10 long years for her and our daughter. How could she do something like that and still expect our daughter to look up to her as a role model? She did not reach out again until it was time to set up visitation with our daughter after the divorce. But you know what? I have already moved on. I have met a wonderful woman who has a daughter of her own and does things for me that my ex-wife never even thought about doing. It is a bit bittersweet, though, because I cannot help but feel like I wasted so many years trusting the wrong person. Moving on to the third story, I guess I should call him my ex-best friend now, but it is tough to accept that our friendship ended just like that. We had built up such a strong bond over the years, and now it is all gone, crumbled to dust. We met back in high school, nearly 15 years ago. He was like a brother to me, and almost like another son to my parents. We practically grew up together, staying at each other's houses all the time. Our families were close, and we went on trips together, creating countless memories. He stood by me as the best man at my wedding, and I was supposed to be the best man at his someday. We have been through so much together, helping each other during rough patches and having those long, deep talks about life, love, and everything in between. He was always there for me when I needed advice and support, and it is hard to even put into words how much losing him hurts. It is almost as painful as losing my wife. It is a gut punch to lose someone who was such a huge part of my life, only to find out he stabbed me in the back. I have been married to my wife for almost 5 years now, but we have been together for a total of 7 years. I still remember the day we first met. It was like a scene out of a movie, Love at First Sight. She was absolutely gorgeous, with those striking blue eyes and a laugh that could brighten anyone's day. I felt like she was out of my league, so I was shocked when she agreed to go out with me. But as we spent more time together, I just fell deeper and deeper in love with her. She had this zest for life and a real drive to help people. Her kindness and warm-hearted nature made me love her even more. Being married to her felt like a dream, and I always thought our relationship was not just good. It was amazing. I made sure to be a good husband too. I took care of myself, stayed in shape, and never forgot our anniversaries or special dates. Whenever she talked to me, I made sure to really listen, to show I cared and valued her. At the same time, I did not crowd her or act needy. I gave her space because I respected her independence. I thought I was doing everything right, but looking back now, I wonder what else I could have done to prevent what happened. Maybe nothing, because you cannot control someone else's choices. But it still stings to realize that, despite all the effort I put in, she threw it all away for someone else. I did my fair share around the house, keeping it clean just like she did. As far as I could tell, our life together in the bedroom was good too. I loved her deeply and treated her the way a husband should, always making sure she felt appreciated. Even after we got married, I made a point to keep dating her, to show her that I still cared. I can honestly say I never took her for granted. But even with all of that, I still catch myself wondering where it all went wrong. I ask myself over and over if there was something more I could have done. Did I go overboard? Did she see me as a pushover? Did she lose respect for me somewhere along the way? It is tough trying to figure it all out. I am not saying our marriage was perfect. We had our disagreements, but they were never anything serious. The real trouble started when my best friend broke up with his girlfriend. He took it hard, and he was pretty down about it. I talked to him, tried to lift his spirits, but then my wife asked if I would mind if she went out for coffee with him to give him some advice from a woman's perspective. I did not see any harm in it, so I said it was fine. After all, she and my best friend were also friends. We used to go on trips as couples, me, her, him, and his girlfriend, and they had spent plenty of time together since he was always hanging around with me. At that point, nothing seemed off to me. Their friendship seemed completely innocent. I do remember him saying my wife was attractive when we first started dating and got married, but I never thought much of it. There were no inappropriate comments or jokes. My wife may have mentioned once that he was good-looking, but it did not raise any alarms. Even now, when I look back, I still cannot see any obvious signs that they could have been anything more than just friends. When my wife came back from that coffee meeting, she was acting a little strange. She seemed really angry with his ex, saying that he deserved someone better. I tried to reassure her, telling her that he was young and would move on in time, but she seemed even more upset by that. She insisted that any woman who ended up with him would be lucky and that his ex was a fool for leaving him. I cannot remember every single thing she said, but the general feeling was that she was being vague, not giving a lot of specific details. Still, it did not seem strange to me back then. I figured she was just being protective of my friend, the same way I would have been. After that night, though, my wife's behavior started to shift. She did not do anything obvious, but she became a little vague about her plans. If she said she was meeting a friend or running an errand, she would not go into much detail. I have never been the controlling type, and she had never given me a reason to doubt her, so I did not make a big deal out of it. It did not seem strange at the time. Meanwhile, my best friend was acting off too, but I figured it was just the breakup getting to him. I kept inviting him to hang out, but he always turned me down. He never gave a clear reason, just said he was busy. I saw less and less of him, and when we did get together, he seemed different. It is hard to explain, but he did not seem as comfortable as he used to be. One day, he messaged me, asking if I could come over to his place. He said he needed to talk and get some things off his chest. I agreed, without suspecting a thing. I knocked on his door, and when he opened it, I tried to lighten the mood with some small talk and jokes, but he ignored me completely. He told me to follow him into the living room, and that is when I saw her, my wife, sitting on his couch. At first, I did not fully understand what was happening, but I could feel this heavy sense of dread building up inside me. As soon as I stepped into the room, she broke down crying. And that is when he said it. There was no easy way to say this, but they were in love and wanted to be together. I was in total shock. It felt like I was not even there, like it was happening to someone else. It took me a while to gather myself, but when I finally did, they both tried to apologize, saying they still cared about me and regretted how things had turned out. I could not believe what I was hearing. How could they both claim to love me and yet do this? It felt like my whole world had been turned upside down in an instant. They kept insisting that it was just an emotional affair, something that happened without any planning. They admitted they were wrong, but said they couldn't ignore the feelings they had for each other. They promised me nothing physical had ever happened between them. Honestly, I do not know if that is true or not, and at this point, I am not sure it even matters anymore. That is where we stand now. Since that day, I have gotten countless texts from both of them, full of apologies. My wife keeps checking in, asking if I am okay, and telling me that she still cares about me. But I mostly ignore her messages now, and over time, they have become less frequent. She decided to move out of our house, and I did not bother asking where she was going. A friend of mine later told me that she moved in with my former friend right after leaving. That was just a few months ago. A few days ago, she came by the house to grab some of her things. I tried to avoid her, but she asked if we could talk for a moment. She told me that she and my ex-friend are trying to have a baby together. She said she wanted to give me a heads up so we could handle it as we go through the divorce. She felt it was important for me to hear it from her, saying I deserved to know. Hearing that really stung. We had plans to have kids together, but she always wanted to wait until she turned 30. Now, he is the one who will be the father of her children, and I have to sit on the sidelines and watch it all happen. I am here looking for any advice you can offer. I do not know how to deal with the idea of her getting pregnant. I feel like it will just be a constant source of pain for me once it happens. I am jealous of him because he is now living the life I had dreamed of having with her. Her pregnancy will make it final. There will be no chance of us ever reconciling after that. I have thought about suggesting counseling, but honestly, I doubt she would be interested, seeing as she has already chosen to be with him. I also do not know how to process any of this. I cannot seem to wrap my head around how they could do this or how I did not see it coming. I cannot understand why she left when we seemed happy. It is making me question everything I thought I knew. If you cannot trust your wife or your best friend, if even a marriage that you put so much effort into can fall apart, it starts to feel like nothing is real. Like life is just one big lie. Sometimes, life is really unfair. Surprisingly, the past few days have been a little better for me since she left. I have started thinking about what the future might look like. I do not have many new updates, but I wanted to share a few things. I have decided to reach out to my ex-friend's former girlfriend to hear her side of their breakup. Maybe I will learn something useful, or maybe not, but I feel like I need to try. I have already spoken to one attorney, but I need to get serious about finding a good lawyer. Next week, I will start looking more actively. Thankfully, my friends and family have given me some recommendations. I do not know exactly when, but I am pretty sure I will be starting counseling soon. My mental health is not in a good place right now, and I know I need professional help to get through this. I have been thinking about writing a letter to both my wife and my ex-friend. Some of you asked why I did not confront him when they first told me about their affair. It has been bothering me because I realize I never actually expressed to them how much they hurt me. I feel like they need to know that, even if they do not care. Many of you have given me suggestions on how to cope, and I appreciate it. I am going to make a few changes around the house to make it feel more comfortable until I can move out. I will try to keep myself busy, but the hardest part so far has been the quiet nights when I am alone, like right now. Those are the times when everything hits me the hardest. Update. A lot of you suggested I get in touch with my ex-friend's ex-girlfriend, let's call her EF, to see if she had any idea about his affair with my wife. So, I did reach out to her. She confirmed what my ex-friend had told me about the reasons for their breakup. I asked her if she ever noticed anything strange or suspected he was seeing another woman before they split, and she said she had no reason to suspect anything. I believe her. She seemed genuinely shocked that they ended up together, and I do not think she has any reason to lie to me. In my previous post, I mentioned writing a letter to my ex-friend and my wife for some kind of closure. Many of you advised me against it, and I ended up following that advice. I wrote the letter for myself, but never sent it. I think you all were right. There is no point in sending it since they probably would not care anyway. A few weeks ago, I finally chose an attorney to represent me. He came recommended, and I trusted him to make sure my interests were protected and that I got a fair outcome in the divorce. Last week, I officially filed for divorce. That was a hard day, but I knew it was something I had to do. There is still a small part of me that daydreams about her coming back and admitting she made a mistake, but I know that is just a fantasy. I cannot build my life around something that is never going to happen. I felt a little better leading up to filing for divorce, but the actual process of filing knocked me back down, and I have been feeling more depressed since then. I thought about doing personal counseling, like many of you suggested, but I decided it is not the right time for me. Luckily, I started a new project at work, and along with the changes I have made in my life, I have been staying busy, which helps. It might sound strange, but part of me does not really want to feel better right now. I feel like this sadness is natural when a marriage falls apart. As for the alienation of affection lawsuit, I decided not to pursue it, even though a lot of you encouraged me to go for it. My attorney explained that it would be difficult to win, and there are no guarantees. Plus, I do not care about the money. Even if I won, it would not change anything. My main focus now is wrapping this up as soon as possible so I can move on and start fresh somewhere else. The only other interesting thing is that after my wife got her divorce papers, she reached out and asked if we could meet and talk. I have not responded, and honestly, I do not know if I will. I doubt there is anything left to say, and I cannot imagine she has anything to tell me that I want to hear. As for what I have been doing, I have been running more, reading a lot, and I even tried out yoga and meditation. Yoga was actually pretty cool, but meditation just was not for me. Work has been keeping me busy, which has been a good distraction. I considered learning French, but for now, I am putting that on hold while I focus on other hobbies. I also got back into fishing, which has helped me clear my head. Basically, I am just trying to stay occupied, so I do not spend too much time alone with my thoughts. Regarding changes around the house, I got rid of a bunch of little things that reminded me of her. I even got a body pillow for the bed, which, surprisingly, has helped me relax and sleep better. I am still sleeping in the guest room, but I might move back into the master bedroom soon. Not that it makes much difference. I am still having trouble sleeping anyway. That is pretty much it. I have been reading a lot about failed relationships and came across some good advice from recommended sites in a YouTube video. The guy in the video said that if someone moves on quickly after a breakup, they probably were not the right person for you in the first place. That got me thinking differently about my wife. I used to believe she was the one, but maybe she was not, if she could do all of this. The video also had some good insights about memories and accepting when someone you once cared about becomes just a part of your past. That is all for now. It is not the happiest or most exciting update, but I guess that is life sometimes. What do you think about this story? Write in comments. If you don't follow our channel Cheating Room, you will probably never hear from us again. If you are subscribed, congratulations, you will not miss any exciting story. Thank you for listening to this shocking story with us. See you again.